welcome to the quadrennial GWIPTYs. Should probably do these more often. Anyway, these Games Awards are slightly different to the standard or sensible award shows you may have seen around this time of year. Instead of merely giving out awards to games that came out this year, this list is based on only games I played this year. And it was a great year. There were tons of great games released this year, and for me personally I got around to playing some real gems too, both on and off stream. This is a tough list to get on. There are games on this list that if I did things properly could win their own Game of the Year awards themselves. Too bad for them, really. But before we get into any of the list proper, I want to give a a mention to Cyberpunk 2077. Because this game just isn't done, but there's something there. It's got something about it, from the neon-lit night city to hanging out with asshole Keanu Reeves to vehicles exploding into motorcycles. CD Projekt Red have really got something on their hands, and I enjoyed my time in Night City. The writing quality is intermittent, but the highs mimic and sometimes even surpass those of The Witcher 3. Though several baffling design decisions drag the game down, such as the looter-shooter system or the overabundance of what boiled down to bandit camps. Though the main reason I couldn't put this game on the list, even if I wanted to, is the absolute state of your game, mate. I've never played a game with more bugs. I've seen more bugs in this game than all of my time playing all Elder Scrolls or Bethesda game combined. I've had T-poses, missing textures, numbers of forced restarts. It's so bad that sometimes you don't know if something is a bug or not. Even if I still overall enjoyed it, I couldn't reward this game for releasing in this state. And I'm on a half-decent PC. This isn't even getting into the console versions, which are unplayable, to the point that Sony is no longer selling it on its store. It'll be interesting to see where this game ends up in a year or two, and if we'll ever see the game that CD Projekt Red really wanted to make. But before we get ahead of ourselves, they absolutely need to fix the console versions. After that, they just need a break. Look, the cat's out of the bag. The horse is bolted and the Emperor is T-posing on a motorcycle with no trousers. We know what state this game is in. It's not done. No amount of crunch is going to take that back, and let's face it, the crunch directly contributed to the buggy mess we got. Now maybe I'm naive, but I still kind of believe that behind all the PR and ironically corporate speak that CD Projekt Red has been putting out, they actually do want to make things right and deliver a game we all enjoy and they can be proud of. Look, and if that's the case, then a lot of looking inward is required here, as well as a lot of patience. Take your time, get it right, and treat your employees like human beings. Now, for some good stuff to talk about, Subnautica! A game that seems to have been around forever, releasing into early access back in 2014, until full release in 2018, and finally getting onto my hard drive in 2019, where I finished it in 2020, so it still counts. So like most of the gaming world from that time period, I'd heard a little bit about Subnautica. It's underwater, it's survival, fishes to eat, or that will eat you, etc. But what I'd seen, I was not prepared for just how beautiful this game is, and not just from the start. Each stage of exploration reveals a beautiful and unique biome to explore. This might be one of the most photogenic games I've played recently. But it's not all about aesthetics, there's a lot of game to be found here. Chiefly a survival game, you get started by simply catching fish and acquiring water to just not die. Slowly you scavenge for new bits and bats, and now you've got transportation, a new base, a steady supply of food and water, and a steady stream of adventure. The game balances its progression very well with its story, giving you radio messages of other survivors before sending you the husk of the spaceship you started on that got shot down. At the same time, you're advancing from water scooter to your first submarine. At the same time as that, you're starting to see more enemies that will want to eat you, and this continues until you have a sprawling base, a multi-personal submarine, and huge terrifying leviathan monsters that will try and eat that as well. It was at this point I'd realised I'd been tricked into playing a horror game. This pace was solid throughout pretty much the whole game. The last quest dragged on a little bit, but the ending made up for it. I felt like I'd been on an adventure. I'd crashed in the middle of nowhere with nothing but an AI voice in my head and my wits about me. I'd survived and even thrived. I'd built a home, I'd taken on a long-forgotten alien race and ultimately saved my own life. And then I was done, and I was content. Number 4. Crusader Kings 3. 2020's premier incest and murders, sometimes both, simulator. What does this say about Crusader Kings? Crusader Kings 2 was an institution of grand strategy. If people ventured beyond Total War, then Crusader Kings 2 was probably where they ended up. And hit a brick wall. A brick wall that I believe few climbed over, and usually it was due to the promise of memes they'd seen on Reddit. But it was a glorious time. Every playthrough was a unique disaster of chaos, conquest and hilarity. From being murdered by your brother, who then marries your sister wife, to accidentally inheriting Germany and trying desperately to get rid of it. But this is about Crusader Kings 3, not Crusader Kings 2. Crusader Kings 3 had the ambitious task of taking this behemoth of a game, with decades of development, like Sims level of expansion packs, and releasing a game that could still capture the spirit of this historical nonsense simulator. And 2, bringing this game to a wider audience while still keeping the old crowd happy. Now, I don't have a poll of Crusader Kings 2 players other than the people I generally interact with, but by all metrics I can see, and my personal and best opinion, they nailed it. While Crusader Kings 3 can't have everything that Crusader Kings 2 had at launch, Crusader Kings 3 doesn't just feel like a base for DLC to complete. It feels like a full and complete experience from the get-go. One of the ways this was achieved was by having a lot more events happen to your character, sort of giving you some pre-packaged stories to complement the main course of madness. Though these can start to repeat a little, generally I like how it works. But the intrigue, the clashing of empires, the trying to figure out medieval marriage laws are still there and havoc-inducing. As well as different civilizations and cultures which can play massively differently. There's a lot of content here. And if Crusader Kings 2, or really any Paradox game, is anything to go by, then Crusader Kings 3 is something I'll be revisiting for a long, long time to come. Number 3.
Then from the dark they came.
Dark Souls. I get it now. I get the hype, I get the memes and jokes, I get the badge of honour around it, I get Dark Souls. I really wasn't sure about getting into Dark Souls, I wasn't even sure if I'd be able to beat it, and I just wanted to dip my toe in and give it a go. Of course, the first thing I did was go the wrong way and get my arse handed to me by skeletons. But after that, I learned to take on one enemy efficiently, I learned to roll, learned to parry, probably forgot how to parry, learned where all the vendors, NPCs and bosses were, learned the challenges of those bosses and ultimately how to overcome them, finding new areas and admiring the world I was in and wondering why it was the way it was, getting through Blighttown and missing the bonfire 3 times and dying on that damn lift, everything about Sen's Fortress, the idea of an area being a boss in its own right, then getting to Ornstein and Smaug and dying I believe 50 times on them, but not quitting. Something about this game made me want to get back up and try again. Sure, sometimes I'd need to take a break, but it was always a break, and I'd always be back. Beating bosses like Ornstein and Smaug or Knight Arturius gave me the feeling of accomplishment I've not felt since my old World of Warcraft raiding days. This game also captured my sense of exploration like few games have, wondering what was down a path with some tough enemies, not knowing that the crypt is an area you need to explore and it gradually opens up into a full cavernous system of its own. The ways you can interact with the world too. I wonder who the first person was to attack Guinevere and what their reaction was when she vanished, a new voice appeared and the sun went out. And then them or potentially a community trying to solve that mystery. And I really think my experience was massively improved by streaming this. Having people to go through this with me, many of whom had been through it themselves and were watching a new soul take it on for the first time. I honestly don't know if I could have done it without you guys. I didn't beat Dark Souls, we did.
I am Guinevere, daughter of Lord Gwyn and Queen of Sun.
Number 2. My game of the year up until about November, Kojima Unleashed, Death Stranding. It was a long, strange trip to get this game. When Kojima was randomly fired from Konami in 2015, he was shortly picked up by Sony. After that, there was a bit of a pause before we got Norman Reedus and his Ghost Baby. What followed seemed to be more trailers deliberately making no sense, so I checked out of the hype train and waited. Then, in 2019, Death Stranding finally revealed its gameplay. A parcel delivery simulator in a post-apocalyptic world where no one can go outside and they just post toys to each other across said wasteland. Could you imagine such a thing? I really wasn't sure what I'd make of this game. The key mechanics seemed to be just ways of carrying stuff mixed with Kojima's trademark nonsense. But I found it strangely compelling. How many orders could I do at once? How much extra stuff could I carry? Can I carry this large container I found? Do I go up this cliff or all the way down? Do I just run up this hill or walk up it? The pacing is fantastic, as every time I started to feel I'd got the hang of something, I'd be given new tools to make those tasks easier and presented with a new challenge. from longer treks, to more spooky rain, to snow, whilst being given little containers to help carry my stuff, new backpacks, and even laser zip lines to tame the mountain expanse. And the story kinda works. The world Kojima has created is, as usual, his strong point. Without giving too much away, everything seems to make sense by the end with the rules it set up for itself, but the mystery of figuring out that kept me intrigued throughout. While the world building is great and the idea of some of the characters is, Kojima really needs someone to go through his dialogue because there were some odd moments. But with the technology of the day, the actors knocked it out of the park and really added a lot to the game with their performances. There's a lot of new ideas in Death Stranding just based around walking, something that may be missing from games nowadays, which try to make things as easy as possible as opposed to making the player engaged. I hope that as we move forward, people take ideas from Death Stranding and try to incorporate them into other games or build on them in some way without just making another Death Stranding. And I look forward to whatever Kojima does next because it's total madness, and for all of his faults, we need more of that. And now, what game in 2020 did I think was my #1 game? Well, I'll tell you what's not. It's not Doom Eternal. Doom Eternal is the best disappointment I've ever played. From a raw gameplay perspective, it is absolutely amazing. Improves on Doom 2016 in so many ways and is an intense white-knuckle ride where you enter a berserker trance and only stop the killing when the heavy metal music or your heart stops. But almost everything else around the gameplay ranges from disappointment to just outright cringe. Everything that made Doom 2016 a masterpiece outside of the gameplay is gone and replaced by a cartoon which feels like it was made by someone who explained why Doom 2016 was good without actually knowing why Doom 2016 was good, but it's the same people. I like the idea of the environment, setting the game as hell on earth, but it goes straight to 11 with no build and then just teleports all over the place. The demons are a step back as well. 2016 really nailed that gritty, otherworldly vibe without going too over the top, but the new ones are just too bright and colourful and look like they're out of a cartoon, and that's not even getting into some of the sound effects. All this while piling on more and more unnecessary story that it felt like the first game would have actively mocked. And I really liked the story presentation of 2016. Oh, and whoever came up with the mortally challenged line, it was a bit of a bad joke at first, and we could have just ignored it, but why oh why is the leader of the Earth Resistance is using that term unironically? I will never know. Someone was way too proud of this joke. Also, before all that, by the way, you don't even get a proper link from 2016 to this game. You just have a space fortress now. What happened? It's still not being explained. But to think of it, this could have just been the Slayer's coma dream. I really wanted to like this game. I pre-ordered it and I played it on day one. And I do plan to play the DLCs because the combat is just so intense like nothing else. It really is that good. When I finished Doom 2016, I couldn't wait for more. I wanted to know more about the Doom Slayer. I wished hell was more helly and I wanted more backstory. The monkey's paw curled and I got my wishes. Love you, Hugo. And now, #1 for realsies this time. It's disco, baby.
There is nothing. Only warm primordial blackness. Your conscious ferments in it. No larger than a single grain of malt. You don't have to do anything anymore. Ever. Never, ever.
Christ, where to start with this one? Even writing this, the horns of Revachol appear in my mind. I'm back. It snowed. Kim's by my side, and there's a murder to solve. Disco Elysium was a game I'd heard about. A game that was a bit wacky and silly with a lot of choice in it. A game where you could die from turning on your ceiling fan or have an argument with your necktie. That was kind of accurate, but I wasn't prepared for what I got. This may well be the best writing in games I've ever seen. And it's not just the main plot, it's every conversation, every line of dialogue.
Yes, it is.
The game has all the bases covered. It knows what you're going to say, and probably why you're a fool for thinking it. It was, at least to me, a very melancholic game. A game about someone at rock bottom with nothing going from them. Someone who hates themselves so much they've obliterated their identity at the bottom of a bottle.
An inordinate amount of time passes. It is utterly void of struggle. No ex-wives are contained within it.
And this is just where you start, a sad, lonely wreck of a human, with a trail of destruction and disappointment in your wake. Who you are now, though, that's up to you. I'd love to delve further into where this game can go and where it can take you, but almost anything else is a spoiler. I will vaguely gesture this, though. Everyone should play this game. I really do think that everyone will find something to relate to in this game. Who hasn't felt like they're at rock bottom and the only way is down, but wanted so desperately to try just one last time to crawl back up?
I know you do, baby. I know.
Maybe I'm getting too preachy, but this game really made me think about things like that, as well as so much more I can't even get into. It's a game that stayed with me when I'd finished a session for hours or even days after, either pondering the story progression or even an offhand line someone said. This game's writing shies away from very little. Communism and capitalism are very prominent themes, for example. If you don't like politics in your video games, this one isn't for you.
Alright, nothing down to fuck all borough.
Disco Elysium is to me an instant classic. Much like Doom 2016 in my last GWIPTY and Hitman in the meantime, this gets a 10 out of 10 for me. I love it. From start to finish I was hooked, and by the end I held up my hands and said, "You mad bastards did it," and I couldn't give it anything less. Disco Elysium has raised the bar for writing in video games, and I really hope it's something that future games will try to shoot for. If this heralds the start of a new breed of adventure games, then I'm all for it.
Dancing to disco music.
And all of this without even getting into the soundtrack, which is absolutely amazing. The graphics, the aesthetics, the skill system, fragments of your personality arguing with each other and lying to you, and on I could go, but we'd be here forever. Now here's where I'd say go buy this game immediately, but at the Game Awards last year, they announced the final cut, releasing in March of this year, with more politics, more philosophy, full voice acting, and just generally more Disco Elysium. I know I'll be booting the game up again, but if this is to be the definitive version, then perhaps wait and get the best experience first time. But do get this experience, you owe it not only to yourself, but to Disco.
Have you felt the love?
Well, YouTube, it's been a while. I've mostly been over at Twitch these days, but I plan in 2021 to make some more YouTube content alongside streaming. In the coming year, you can expect some new game reviews of things I've been playing, as well as potentially trying my hand at some video essay style content. I have a few ideas, but I don't want to lay them out as I'm not sure where to go first, but it should be fun. Honestly, this video was kind of a warm-up, and honestly it got out of hand. I'd planned it to be around 10 minutes, but we'll see how long this ends up. Anyway, here's to 2021 being better than 2020, though strictly in terms of games, that'll be a tall order. Rest of the world less so. But regardless of what it brings, a big thank you to those who made it this far, and hopefully we'll see more of each other as it goes on. Look, this has been long enough. I'll see you later. Have a good one.